7 heists. 7 crimes that should have been impossible. A tunnel the length of a football field, dug under a city, $1 billion driven off the night before a war. And they only get more unbelievable as we count down to number 1. Number 7. The Great Train Robbery. In August 1963, 15 men stopped a moving Royal Mail train with nothing but a fake signal and a glove. The gang, led by Bruce Reynolds, flat cap, small bag slung over shoulder, had rigged the trackside light to flash red. The driver stopped. The crew boarded. And in under 30 minutes, they threw $2.6 million in used banknotes off the train. They hid at Leatherslade Farm and passed the time playing Monopoly with real stolen cash. That board undid them. Their fingerprints were everywhere. Ronnie Biggs escaped prison and ran for 36 years, across Europe, Australia, and finally Brazil. Of the 15 men, most were eventually caught and sentenced to over 20 years each, but most of the $2.6 million was never recovered. Number 6. The Central Bank of Iraq. The biggest bank robbery in history was pulled off with one handwritten note. The night before the U.S. invasion of Iraq, Qusay Hussein, dark beret, upright posture, arrived at the central bank. He carried a note signed by his father, Saddam. The staff had no choice. They handed over the cash, nearly $1 billion in U.S. $100 bills, loaded onto trucks and driven into the night. No alarm, no gunfire, not a single shot. About $650 million was later found stuffed inside the walls of one of the family's palaces. Not buried, not hidden offshore. Inside the walls, the remaining $350 million has never been found. Investigators spent months piecing together where it went. Most trails went cold before they reached an answer. Number 5. The Hatton Garden Vault Burglary. Britain's biggest burglary was pulled off by a gang of pensioners. Over Easter weekend 2015, Brian Reeder, flat cap, walking cane, aged 76, led his crew into the heart of London's jewelry district. They lowered an industrial diamond drill down a lift shaft and bored straight through half a meter of reinforced concrete. Then they emptied the boxes. Up to $14 million in diamonds, gold, and cash. But their own arrogance gave them away. One kept watch in his own car, caught on CCTV. Another bragged about the whole job out loud in a pub. But the police had already bugged their car and heard every word. Every single one was caught. The ringleader, Brian Reeder, was jailed for over 6 years, and most of the $14 million was never seen again. Number 4. The Banco Central Tunnel Heist. In 2005, a crew in Fortaleza rented a house near the bank, hung a sign for a landscaping company, and started digging. For 3 months, they dug a 256-foot tunnel, lit, lined, and ventilated, directly under the city streets. Neighbors walked past every day and noticed nothing unusual. Then, over one weekend, they bored up through 1.1 meters of steel-reinforced concrete and into the vault. They took Roan $164.7 million, about $70 million US dollars, in untraceable used notes. Most of the money was never recovered, and some of the crew were later kidnapped by rivals who wanted their cut. The money scattered. The crew scattered with it, and the case never fully closed. Number 3. The Lufthansa Heist. They pulled off the biggest cash robbery in American history, and then almost everyone who knew about it turned up dead. December 11, 1978. Jimmy Burke acted on an insider tip and sent his crew into a Lufthansa cargo vault at JFK. In under an hour, they walked out with $5.9 million in cash and jewels, the biggest haul America had ever seen. But Burke had a problem. Too many people knew too much. So, over the following months, nearly the entire crew was murdered, one by one. 6 men in total. Burke sat untouchable for years. He was eventually convicted of a separate murder, never the heist itself. Only one man was ever convicted for the robbery. The heist became the centerpiece of Goodfellas. The money was never recovered, but the next crew didn't rely on insiders or muscle. They relied on something else entirely. Genius. Number 2, the Antwerp Diamond Heist, a vault 2 floors underground, wrapped in 10 layers of security, and it was emptied without tripping a single alarm. Leonardo Notarbartolo and the School of Turin spent months preparing. He rented an office in the very same building to study the daily routines for nearly a year. He learned exactly when every guard changed, when every sensor cycled, and when the vault sat unwatched. One by one, they defeated the combination dial, the key lock, the magnetic sensor, heat detectors, motion sensors, light sensors, and the seismic alarm. Over one weekend in February 2003, they cracked 109 of 189 boxes, an estimated $100 million in diamonds, gold, and cash. Gone. They called it the perfect crime. But they dumped their rubbish on a road near the scene. DNA on a half-eaten sandwich led straight to Nodar Bartolo. He was convicted. He served his time. He said nothing. The diamonds were never found, and Nodar Bartolo never revealed where they went. He gave one interview after his release and spent most of it smiling. 100 million in diamonds. Still out there somewhere, but even genius and even diamonds can be replaced. What comes next cannot. Number 1. The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum theft. Two men dressed as police officers walked into a museum and walked out with $500 million in art that has never been seen since. It was just after St. Patrick's Day, 1990. Two men told the night guard they were responding to a disturbance call. Against museum rules, he buzzed them in. Within minutes, both guards were handcuffed to pipes in the basement. Then, the clock started. 81 minutes. That is all they took. They cut masterpieces from their frames, not prying them, slicing, and left the empty frames on the walls. Vermeer's The Concert, one of only approximately 34 Vermeers in existence, ripped from the wall. Rembrandt's only seascape, gone. A tiny Rembrandt etching, a Manet, a Flink, a Chinese bronze finial lifted from its case. 13 works in total, $500 million, rolled up and carried out a side door. When the guards were found in the morning, the world had lost more art in one night than in any theft before or since. The FBI has spent 36 years on the case. They believe the crew had ties to Boston and Philadelphia organized crime. But no charges have ever been filed. No one has ever been brought to justice. A $10 million reward sits completely unclaimed. In 2013, the FBI announced they had identified the thieves. But both men were already dead. The case was solved in name only. No arrest, no paintings, the largest art theft in history, and not a single painting recovered. But here is the one detail that stays with you. Isabella Stewart Gardner's will contains an unusual instruction. The collection must never be rearranged. Not one piece may be moved, ever. And so to this day, the empty frames still hang exactly where the stolen paintings were. Not taken down, not stored. Waiting. 36 years of visitors have stood in that room and looked at empty frames, where some of the greatest art ever made used to be. Somewhere those paintings still exist, and whoever has them has said nothing for 36 years.